She slammed her fist on my door and screamed, "Step outside right now, this is an official HOA order." Before I could even ask what she meant, two men in cheap-looking uniforms marched onto my porch, flashing fake badges like they were straight out of some bad TV show. Karen, the self-declared queen of the neighborhood, pointed at me and shouted, "Arrest him! He's violating HOA rules and trespassing on community property." I almost laughed, but the way she barked at them made it clear she actually believed her own power trip. One of the so-called officers puffed up his chest and said, "Sir, you need to come with us." I leaned against the doorway, calm, watching their cheap plastic handcuffs dangling from a belt like kids' toys. "On what grounds?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Karen cut in before they could speak, her face red and shaking. "You parked your car on my curb and you refused to take down that fence. That's grounds enough. You don't belong here. The HOA voted you out." The neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering, phones raised, recording the circus. The fake cops moved closer, clearly expecting me to fold under pressure. But inside, I was holding back a smirk. They had no idea who they were trying to intimidate. Because I wasn't just some random homeowner, I was FBI. And I had been watching Karen for weeks, waiting for her to pull something exactly like this. "Funny thing," I said slowly, letting the silence drag. "You're trying to arrest me on my own land, with fake badges. Do you know impersonating law enforcement is a federal crime?" Karen froze for a second, but then snapped, "Don't listen to him. He's lying. Just cuff him already." The men reached for me, and that's when I pulled something from my jacket, my real badge. The one that didn't bend like cardboard. Her jaw dropped. The neighbors gasped. And the fake cops? They froze like statues, caught between a furious Karen and the federal agent standing calmly in front of them. I tilted my head, gave them the kind of smile that carried both warning and promise. "Now," I said quietly, "which one of you wants to explain this first?" The silence was heavy. Only the sound of Karen's heavy breathing broke it. Her eyes darted between my badge and the two men who suddenly looked like they'd just realized they'd walked into the wrong movie. One of them actually took a step back, his fake badge slipping slightly from his shirt pocket. "Don't just stand there," Karen screeched, her voice cracking. "Do your job. Arrest him. He can't flash a toy badge and scare us. I'm the HOA president. I have authority here." Her words made the neighbors chuckle nervously from their windows. Everyone knew Karen loved calling herself president, but nobody had ever seen her with real paperwork. She had a stack of self-printed notices typed in Comic Sans, plastered all over doors, claiming fines and fees that didn't even exist. The taller fake cop tried to recover his act. He cleared his throat, squared his shoulders, and said, "Sir, we're going to need you to—" "Stop," I interrupted, my voice low, sharp. "Don't take another step. You've already committed a felony by wearing that badge." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "Do you know what the minimum sentence is for impersonating a federal officer?" His face drained of color. The other guy muttered, "Karen, I told you this was a bad idea." But she whipped around, jabbing a finger at him like he was her servant. "Shut up, he's bluffing. He's nobody. This is our neighborhood, and we decide who stays and who goes." That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just entitled, she was dangerous. She wasn't afraid to drag innocent people into her power games, even if it meant breaking federal law. I stepped onto the porch, slowly, deliberately, so everyone watching could see. I raised my voice just enough for the neighbors recording from their windows. "For the record, these two men are impersonating officers, and this woman is instructing them to commit an arrest without any legal grounds. That's conspiracy. That's obstruction. That's a case." Karen's mouth opened and closed like she'd swallowed a wasp. She hadn't expected me to go public. The fake cop shifted nervously, caught between running and staying. I pulled out my phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. "This is Agent Cole," I said calmly. "I need 2 marked units at my address. I have 3 suspects, impersonation and conspiracy to commit unlawful detention." The line crackled, then a firm voice replied, "Copy that." "Units on the way." Karen went pale. For the first time, she looked like she knew she'd lost control. But her pride wouldn't let her back down. "You think you can scare me with your little act?" She spat, stepping closer. "I've run this HOA for 10 years. Everyone here knows me. Nobody cares about your badge. This is my neighborhood, not yours." I looked her dead in the eyes and said the line that made the neighbors gasp. "No, Karen, this isn't your neighborhood. This is federal property now because you just turned it into a crime scene. Karen staggered back like I had slapped her with those words. For the first time, the confident sneer slipped from her face, replaced with something closer to fear. The taller fake cop muttered under his breath, "We should go." But Karen spun on him like a wildcat. "Don't you dare leave me now," she hissed. "You work for me. You finish this." That was all I needed. Her own mouth had just tied the knot around her neck. I kept my voice calm, steady, the kind that cuts deeper than yelling. "You just admitted you hired them. Congratulations, Karen. You're not just guilty of harassment. You're guilty of orchestrating a federal crime." Phones lifted higher in the windows. Neighbors whispered louder. What was once just another one of Karen's HOA tantrums had become a live courtroom, with everyone recording. The shorter fake cop looked at me, then at Karen, and finally shook his head. "I'm out. I didn't sign up for this." He ripped the badge from his shirt and threw it onto the grass. Karen lunged toward him, clawing at his arm. "You coward! You don't walk away from me!" But the guy shoved her hand off and bolted down the street, leaving her shrieking like a banshee. The taller one still stood frozen, sweating bullets, eyes glued to my real badge. Then from down the road came the sound that sealed her fate. Sirens. Real police. Real authority. The kind that didn't bend like paper and didn't answer to Karen. The neighbors gasped. Some even stepped outside, phones rolling, eager to watch the showdown. Karen, however, only doubled down. She stormed up to me, jabbing her finger into my chest. "You think calling your little buddies will save you? I'll tell them everything. You've been harassing me, you've been threatening me, you're not even FBI. You forged that badge." I tilted my head, calm as ice, and whispered just loud enough for the nearest cameras to catch it. "Karen, if you say that to the officers when they arrive, you'll be filing a false report. In front of half the neighborhood. Do you really want to gamble with federal prison time?" Her mouth quivered, but pride wouldn't let her stop. "You'll regret this." She spat. The squad cars pulled up, red and blue lights painting the houses. Doors swung open, real officers stepping out. Neighbors cheered quietly, like they were watching justice walk into the street. Karen folded her arms, plastering on a fake smile, ready to spin her story. But what she didn't know was that I had already anticipated this move, and I had prepared the evidence to end her reign once and for all. The squad car doors slammed shut and two uniformed officers strode up the driveway. Their body cams blinked red, recording every second. Karen straightened her blouse like she was about to receive an award. "Officers," she shouted, waving dramatically. "Thank God you're here. Arrest this man immediately. He broke into our community, threatened me, and he's flashing a fake badge to scare people. He's dangerous." She stepped aside, pointing at me like she had just unmasked a criminal. Some neighbors actually gasped, curious if her story could possibly hold up. The taller fake cop shifted uncomfortably, sweat dripping from his temple, praying no one called on him to speak. One officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, calm down. We'll hear both sides." He turned to me, his eyes narrowing as they fell on the badge in my hand. "Sir, identification, please." I handed it over smoothly. "Special Agent Cole, FBI, badge number 6425. You can verify with your system." The officer took it, his expression shifting when the weight of the real metal badge hit his palm. He glanced at his partner, who tapped his radio. Seconds later, dispatch confirmed. "Badge verified. That's Agent Cole, FBI." Karen's jaw dropped so wide it looked like it might unhinge. No, that's not possible." "He's lying. He forged it, I swear." That's when I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. A live feed appeared. My security cameras synced straight to a federal database. The footage from 5 minutes ago played on the screen. Karen standing on my porch screaming, "Arrest him," and ordering the two fake cops to detain me. Her own words, crystal clear, recorded and time-stamped. The officer's brow furrowed. He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, is this you on the video?" Karen stammered, her face turning beet red. That's fake. He edited it. This is harassment." But the neighbors had been recording too. One shouted from across the street. "I've got the same thing on my phone, officer. She brought those fake cops here." Another chimed in. "She's been posting fake HOA fines for years. We all knew something was off." The taller fake cop finally broke. He dropped his plastic badge onto the ground, his voice trembling. "She paid us $50 each to put these on and act tough. I didn't know he was FBI, I swear. The crowd erupted in gasps. Karen shrieked like a cornered animal. You liar! You both work for me. Don't betray me now. The officer stepped forward, his hand already on his cuffs. Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy, impersonation of law enforcement, and attempted unlawful detention. The neighborhood erupted. Phones everywhere caught the moment. Karen flailed, screaming, No! You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I run this neighborhood. I leaned in close so only she could hear me over the commotion. My voice was calm, steady and final. Not anymore, Karen. Your reign is over. Karen thrashed in the officer's grip, her voice rising to a shrill scream that carried down the street. You don't understand. You can't arrest me. I have friends in high places. You'll regret this, every single one of you. The officers tightened the cuffs, ignoring her protests, but her words stuck in the air like a bad omen. The neighbors who were cheering a second ago suddenly went quiet. High places? What did she mean? One officer read her rights, but Karen wouldn't stop spitting threats. I'll have your badges. You'll lose your jobs. I'll sue every one of you for harassment. My cousin is a judge. My brother-in-law runs City Hall. You think this ends here? The taller fake cop muttered under his breath. She's not bluffing about connections. His words made the younger officer glance at me uneasily. Agent Cole, sir, should we take her straight downtown or... I held up a hand. My gut told me Karen wasn't just being dramatic this time. I'd seen her type before. Entitled enough to think the world bent around them, but smart enough to weave dirty deals behind closed doors. If she had ties inside city government, it might explain how she'd been running her fake HOA scam for so long without being stopped. I turned to the cameras still pointed at us. The neighbors. The phones, the blinking red lights of police body cams. Record everything, I said loudly. No matter what she claims, this case is already on the record. Karen's face twisted with fury when she realized what I was doing. She leaned forward, teeth clenched, eyes blazing. You think you're clever? You don't know who you're messing with. I built this neighborhood. I own these people. And then she said it, the line that made everyone freeze. I've done this before, and nobody ever stopped me. The officer holding her actually hesitated, shocked. What do you mean by that, ma'am? She sneered, jerking her head toward me. Ask the Johnsons 2 streets over. Ask the Parkers. They tried to fight me too. But they don't live here anymore, do they? A ripple of unease moved through the crowd. The Johnsons. The Parkers. Families who had mysteriously moved away after fighting with Karen's so-called HOA. Some neighbors looked at each other in horror, suddenly realizing Karen's games may have destroyed more lives than anyone thought. Felt the chill run down my spine, but I kept my voice steady. Then it looks like, Karen, you just confessed to a whole lot more than you meant to. The officers exchanged a grim look. This was bigger than a fake arrest. Much bigger. And as they dragged her toward the squad car, Karen locked eyes with me and hissed one last threat under her breath. You think you've won? This is just the beginning. Karen was shoved into the back of the squad car, but the smirk on her face didn't match someone who had just been caught red-handed. She leaned against the window, staring straight at me as the flashing red and blue lights painted her face. It wasn't fear. It was confidence. The neighbors whispered in uneasy tones. One muttered, If what she said about the Johnsons and Parkers is true, then she's been running people out of here for years. Another shook his head, and nobody ever stopped her. How? I knew the answer before I even spoke it. Connections, corruption. A web bigger than one angry woman with a fake HOA title. The taller fake cop, still standing frozen in the yard, suddenly blurted out, She's protected. She told us her brother-in-law's office makes her complaints disappear. Said even the police don't touch her. He swallowed hard, looking at the real officers nervously. We thought it was just talk, but... Now, the officers exchanged looks. One of them tapped his radio. Dispatch, this might need to go federal. We've got potential obstruction in local offices tied to this suspect. Karen heard every word and laughed, actually laughed, from the back of the cruiser. Do you think anyone's going to believe him? She sneered, nodding toward the fake cop. He was wearing a plastic badge. You think a DA is going to take his word against mine? That was when I stepped closer to the car. Her grin faltered as I leaned down, speaking just loud enough for the neighborhood to hear. You keep forgetting something, Karen. You're not fighting me in the dark anymore. You're fighting me in front of the whole neighborhood. On record, on camera, and with federal backup. Her smirk wavered, but her pride kept her from looking away. "Even you can't touch my people. They'll bury your case before it ever hits court." I straightened, slipped my phone from my pocket, and with one swipe projected her confession from my security feed onto a small screen mounted on my porch. Her voice echoed through the speakers clear as day. "Ask the Johnsons. Ask the Parkers. They don't live here anymore, do they?" The crowd gasped. Phones flew up to record it. Dozens of witnesses all catching her in her own words. The younger officer muttered, "She's cooked." But I shook my head. My instincts screamed this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because if Karen really had allies buried inside City Hall, then what we'd uncovered tonight was just the tip of a much deeper rot, and I had a sinking feeling Karen's final words weren't a bluff. This was just the beginning. The squad cars began to roll, carrying Karen away, but her laughter still rang in my ears. It wasn't the sound of someone defeated. It was the sound of someone who believed the system would bend for her. And the worst part? She might not be wrong. That night, as I filed my preliminary report, my phone buzzed with an encrypted message. It wasn't from the FBI. It was from an unknown number, masked, bouncing off overseas servers. The message was only 5 words: "Walk away. This isn't yours." I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Whoever sent it knew who I was and what I was working on. That wasn't a random threat. That was someone inside. The next morning, it got worse. I showed up at the field office only to find my report on Karen's arrest had been erased, not filed, not even pending. Erased like it never happened. One of my colleagues, Agent Ramirez, pulled me aside, whispering, "Cole, someone upstairs shut your case down. They said it was a local dispute, not federal. You're supposed to stand down." Local dispute? A woman hiring fake cops to arrest a federal agent on his own property was now just local? No chance. My gut screamed the corruption ran deeper than Karen's smug little HOA game. And then came the kicker. Ramirez lowered his voice, his eyes darting around. "Word is her brother-in-law sits on the zoning board. And the judge she mentioned? She wasn't bluffing. He signed off on more than one of her HOA's eviction orders." The puzzle pieces clicked. The Johnsons. The Parkers. Families bullied out. Paperwork officially approved. Homes seized cheap and flipped for profit. Karen wasn't just a neighborhood tyrant. She was the front face of a bigger scheme protected from the top. That night I returned home to find an envelope taped to my fence. No address, no stamp. Just one sheet of paper inside. Last warning. Stop digging. We know who you are. We know where you live. The neighbors saw me reading it under the porch light. Some urged me to leave it alone. Others begged me to keep going. One older man, Mr. Harris, who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Agent, don't let her win. We've all been scared too long." I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. If they thought threats would scare me off, they picked the wrong man, because now, this wasn't just about Karen. This was about everyone she and her people had destroyed. And I wasn't going to stop until the whole rotten tree came crashing down. The final crack came faster than I expected. A week after Karen's arrest, the neighborhood buzzed with rumors. Some said she'd already been released, others whispered she was meeting lawyers downtown. But I stayed patient, because I had something Karen didn't: time and evidence. Every night, I pieced together the files: phony eviction orders, doctored HOA notices, city permits with the same judge's signature, the same zoning board stamps. It was a trail so sloppy that once it was laid side by side, it looked less like paperwork and more like a criminal blueprint. Then came the break. One of the families Karen had forced out, the Parkers, agreed to meet me. They had been living in a small apartment miles away, scared and broke after losing their house. The father slid a folder across the table. Inside were letters, threats, fake fines, even a bogus foreclosure document. All signed with the same names Karen had shouted the night she was arrested. That was it. The missing puzzle piece. I pushed it up the chain, but not through the corrupted offices. Instead, I went straight to Washington. When the case hit the federal prosecutors' desks, it moved like wildfire. Within days, subpoenas dropped. Phones were seized. Accounts frozen. And then, live on the evening news. It all unraveled. Later that night, I sat on my porch as the crickets hummed and the street felt lighter than it had in years. Families were outside again. Kids rode bikes without fear of Karen chasing them down. The neighborhood finally belonged to the people, not to her. And as I looked at the stars above, one thought burned steady in my chest.